That's very generous. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much indeed for having me. I don't think we're going to agree on very much today, but one thing I think we can agree on is it's extremely generous of you to have me here today, and thank you for holding this debate, because I wanted to take place. So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, can I ask, how many people here support driven grouse shooting? Yeah. Well, one. Security? Two.
Three.
Get them out of here. That's terrific. Not quite the audience I hoped for, but there you go. And how many people here support walked up, sort of one for the pot type grouse shooting? Is that all right? Yeah, a few, yeah. Yes, there we are. 3 on stage. Got encouragement there. And just last question. The idea of shooting birds for what we call countryside management. Are we all happy with that? Not happy? No, we're not happy with that. Okay, right. I'm going to call you a relatively hardline audience. I'm going to be going off that way. First of all, Chris, can I ask you, it's something you obviously want to get off your chest. It's something you have got off your chest on social media. How angry are you about hen harriers? Just tell me that.
Well, Charlie, yes, I think I can speak for just about everyone here. We are very angry about the plight of the hen harrier. As a young man, I imagined their population would be able to grow, as I hoped at that point that persecution would decline as we became more aware of the need to conserve not just grouse or any other of those farmed game birds or cultured game birds, but also all of the other species which support that important ecology. And I never imagined that we would get to a point at this time in 2019 when we had only a handful of pairs of these birds breeding in England.
It's not quite a handful, it's a few more.
Well, okay,
than that.
it's
been a stable population for quite a long time, up and down a bit, but not too bad.
It's been stable at a very low. I mean, we were talking about 15 pairs this year. We could have 300. And I think that our aspirations as conservationists at a time when many species are in decline, not just hen harriers, and for many other reasons, are that we want to maximise the number of species and the health of our habitats that we have in the UK. So the ongoing persecution makes me angry. My manifestation of that anger is what we see in terms of wild justice and other campaigns. I'm determined to use that anger in a creative way to make things better.
Well, I must say, I do think you're using it in a creative way, but we're coming on to that in a minute. Mark, you also, I know, because Mark and I have already had a chat. We stood in the field somewhere in the Midlands, and we did a 1-hour podcast, so I kind of already know your views, but I just express your anger about the hen harrier situation, just so we have a sort of a starting point.
I agree with Chris.
Okay, just the point is what he says is not an answer, right?
But also, I agree with the government, because in the 1980s, there were 2 special protection areas designated in the north of England, partly to protect hen harriers. One of them is the Forest of Bowland, which was designated because it had 10 pairs of hen harriers, and the other one was in Yorkshire, which had about 6. Now, those are supposed to be the most protected areas for wildlife under any legislation that applies to any of us, and you're bigging up 15 pairs in the whole of the north of England this year. It's not enough. We deserve at least 10 pairs in Bowland, at least 6 pairs in the other SPA, and scores of pairs everywhere else.
So the 47 chicks that fledged on mainly grouse-moors in Bowland this year, is that annoying for you? Because you're trying to run a campaign here. You're trying to get driven grouse shooting banned, aren't you?
I am trying to get driven grouse shooting banned, along with nearly 60,000 other people so far. But is it annoying that there are lots of hen harriers reared in Bowland? Now, remember, the last time we did this, the deal is you ask the questions and I give the answer.
we just spent a lot of time doing that.
I know. So, I think you're a great guy. I love you to bits. But am I pleased that there were 47 hen harrier chicks reared? Of course.
Of course.
Were they reared on grouse moors?
Yes.
They were reared on United Utilities land, which has some grouse shooting done on it, but it's primarily which is primarily there to produce good water. Next door to United Utilities land is a much larger driven grouse moor owned by the Duke of Westminster. How many pairs of hen harriers did he have? None this year. The last successful nest that his Grace had on his land, much bigger than the United Utilities land, was 2003. He must be gutted, mustn't he? Because moorland owners just love this bird. The Duke of Westminster must be
Right,
turning...
this is, okay, you were going to have to shut you up there. And
Yeah,
I do want to
fair
bring
enough.
Ruth in here, because we also have to use this to kind of introduce people. So Ruth, you run Raptor Persecution, and you've been doing it since 2010, is that right? And it's
Yes.
a blog which is basically dedicated to outing moments of Raptor persecution. And the hen harrier has been central to your story there. So, I mean, if I said to you that I are equally appalled when raptors are killed illegally on moors, and so are the shooting organisations, how would you answer that? Because that is the case. We are equally appalled that raptors are killed on grouse moors.
Well, great, you should be. What we need to see more of is people from within the shooting industry actually calling that out and calling out the estates that are involved, the sporting agents that are involved, the land agents that are involved, and the gamekeepers are involved. And don't tell me that you don't know who they are, because we all know who they are.
Well, I wish you would, Tom, because I have spent a long time in the industry and I don't know who they are.
Read the blog.
Okay. your line is you know who they are. Because I think one thing that's happened this year, which is very important, is, I mean, you referred to this in the Channel 4 interview, Chris, at the beginning of the week, that the government has brought out a hen harrier report, which names and shames the grouse shooting world as being the people who... And that grouse shooting report goes from 2000 to 2017. Now, what's happened this year, in my world, in the world of shooting, of driven grouse shooting, is there has been, a ship has been moving around, and it's suddenly got a tugboat in front of it, which is this report. It's got 3 people in a rubber dinghy with loud hailers shouting at us at the same time, but the movement is taking place from this tug. And I think you had trouble finding good quality raptor persecution cases this year.
I don't think so. I mean, firstly,
Come
okay.
back on that
Well,
one.
firstly, our rubber boat is powered by 2 850 horsepower engines, and it's keeping up with the tug and applying plenty of pressure.
It makes a lot of noise.
That's great. They're eco-friendly engines. They're running on electric. The key thing is that we haven't had a shortage of persecution incidents this year. We've had a male hen harrier found in a fen trap, lying out in the open for God knows how many hours before it was rescued and subsequently died despite...
One at Lead Hills.
That's correct, on Lead Hills. We've had another bird which was found again in a leg hold trap, which had flipped over, having been killed some time before, and the transmitter came back to life. We've had 2 golden eagles that we were following, with pings that are coming out once a minute, and we know where they are, plus or minus 3 meters. And by looking at the data of those animals, we know exactly what they're doing that morning. And we have to say, because we have no more evidence, but we have very strong suspicions, that they disappeared under mysterious circumstances. And again, if you go to Ruth's blogs, there is a litany of persecution. We just had a buzzard beaten to death, again, on that Lead Hills estate, filmed by the RSPB. So there is an ongoing litany of persecution.
Okay,
Look, Charlie, what about the beginning of this week? There's a golden eagle flying
around Balmoral with
a trap hanging off of
okay.
its leg. These guys just don't know when to stop. There's no internal regulation. They are out of control.
This is not true. If we have to pause every time he says something you like, I'm going to make sure we're here all afternoon. Ruth, go back to your blog. I mean, this is what we find strange in the world of grouse shooting. We've had 3 cases of birds of prey caught in fen traps. When was apart from when they're on pole traps and going back a long time ago, because pole traps have been illegal for a long time, they're very obvious on grouse moors. You can see them from a long way. So people, if they were to do it, they would not use a pole trap. When was the last time you had birds caught in fen traps, apart from these 3?
Off the top of my head, there was a buzzard in the Monolith, on the grouse moor in the Monolith.
Well, do you know, I looked. Yes, a couple. It's all this year.
What about that guy setting that pole trap
What's so strange?
on the National Trust land?
There's the guy who's filmed by the RSPB on Mossdale Grouse Moor setting.
You're still allowed to set fen traps, and you've got lots.
No, not on a post. You're not.
Obviously not on a post. But I'm talking about fen traps on the ground.
Okay.
And the one you found at Lead Hills, the fen trap was on the ground.
Yeah.
What is really peculiar to us? This is not a sort of great big, therefore we are all right. Okay, I'm telling you there has been a problem with persecution. I'm telling you that the ship is moving around. We are doing our best, but it's a very big ship and you're in a very small, fast motorboat, all right? Keep that analogy going. But we would not use, if I were sent out to kill raptors, I would not use a fen trap. And if I was sent out to kill raptors with the situation as febrile as it is at the moment, with people peering through gamekeepers' windows in the middle of the night, with people putting up a dead hare, hanging it from a tree, you know, that is not a nice, it's not a nice place to live at the moment.
Well, you try my place, Charlie, because I'm thinking of opening a taxidermy business, to be quite honest with you.
Okay, well, we all get death threats, Chris, and I must say I observed a minute's silence along with everybody else at the EFRA committee about your dead crows. I'm sorry for that. I mean, I did hear from one of the people in your village, it might have been a neighbour, but there we are. We'll leave that.
Well, Charlie,
that was sour grape.
Can I just go back to that question then? Are you suggesting that we're making these things up?
I'm suggesting that nobody sensibly would put out a fen trap to kill a raptor, and you've had 3 really good cases from the point of view of banning grouse shooting this year. You've had 3 fantastic cases. I mean, an eagle over Balmoral. You even mentioned, Mark Avery, in your book, Inglorious 12th, that wouldn't, you know, the moment in 2046 that they banned grouse shooting was when they found the Queen was poisoning raptors.
Great book.
It's a great book. I've enjoyed it enormously. You should all get it. And Chris's book. And Ruth's book's very good too. Anyway, the point is, it is a stupid way to kill raptors if in a situation where everybody is looking at you. Lead Hills, there are people out on those moors every day of the week. There have been 6 cases reported to the police of perfectly legal traps either trashed or taken away, including fen traps taken away. All right, I'm not saying that this is the absolutely be-all and end-all of our argument, but what I am saying is I think you're overshooting the wrong way with this stuff, because 2007 to 2017, which is the point where the hen harrier report covered, okay, for there, we had a problem. Now, we're moving that problem around, and you're still pushing forward with your campaign to ban grouse shooting.
Absolutely.
You are.
Yes.
Okay, and you're not worried about that. You think all this publicity is, you know, for its own sake is fine. This kind of pantomime of I'm really angry and all that.
I think when people saw that eagle with that trap hanging from its leg earlier in the week, they were spurred on. And I think that if we were able to quantitatively measure a decline in persecution, and we were able to discern a willingness for proper compromise and dialogue, then we would see, you know, the rubber boat beginning to pull alongside with a loudhailer.
We might be in a position then where we're going to agree on 2 things. So the point where you say, okay, you have the whip hand that the shooting industry is prepared to talk. Is that the point you take the foot off the gas?
Well, I think we want to be very specific. We have never been anti-shooting.
Oh, come on.
No, we've never been anti-sustainable and legal shooting at all. You know, we recognise that shooting can bring benefits to communities, it can bring benefits to wildlife management and conservation and so on and so forth. The focus of our ire has always been very specifically on illegal persecution and unsustainable shooting. And the reason why we focused, therefore, on driven grouse shooting is because that type of shooting, and there are plenty of others that are practiced in the UK, as you know, are where most of those incidents are occurring. And we would argue that driven grouse shooting is unsustainable for environmental as well as wildlife persecution reasons.
Okay,
so within the shooting fraternity, I think we have to be very clear to see that there are different niches. And one of the things that we're able to detect is that within that fraternity, there is already very serious concern that their reputation of the everyday rough shooter or the walk-up grouse shooter is being damaged by those who are practicing driven grouse shooting because of its intensity and because of the relentless persecution associated with it.
Right, we're going to come. I think he probably deserves a quick clap for that.
No, we haven't got time. We haven't got time.
I'd clap the first half. I just wouldn't clap the second half. All right. But Mark, I want to.
Can I just
go on,
quickly pick you up on a couple of things?
Oh, God.
So you said...
He's such a schoolmaster.
No, it's because I listen to what you say, whereas you never listen to what I say, Charlie. That's how it works. No clapping,
no, we haven't got time, Charlie. We've got to get through as much as Charlie
said a while ago, and it's all on film, you said that our position is that we know who's responsible for raptor persecution. We think we've got a very good idea about some of the individuals involved, but our position is that the shooting industry knows who's responsible for raptor persecution, and it's your problem to weed out those bad apples, so get on with it. Then the other thing you asked was, do we think that people are stupid enough to use fen traps in this febrile time? Everything suggests that they absolutely are.
First time in history where they suddenly decide to use the most public way of not really killing a raptor. Are you
There
sure?
are so many poison baits left out in the open. People have been filmed shooting birds of prey. Do we think that this is happening and that sometimes, by chance, people are getting caught a bit more now? Absolutely, that's what we think.
Okay, we're going to have to disagree about that. We're going to have to disagree about the science points, and particularly about the science points which you made in your Channel 4 interview. I think the Daily Mail put up a counter to your, actually it was the Labour Party's science points, wasn't it? But the same idea. There's one more bit about the febrile atmosphere, because last weekend at the Hen Harrier Day, Mark, you had lovely, cuddly Dominic Dyer calling for mass trespass on grouse-moors, and yeah, he did. He called for an army. Yes, he did. It was a good, it was a good thumping speech. Didn't quite get the kind of roars of approval perhaps he hoped, but then we did see photographs of 100 people in black balaclavas trespassing on grouse-moors at the beginning of the week. Are you happy with that? I mean, this is your day. It's rural terrorism for us.
The three of us and Wild Justice, the three of us together, we want people to stick to the law. So we want people to protest, we want them to speak up, but we are campaigning against wildlife crime. We do not encourage people to go out and break the law.
So you're not encouraging mass trespass, but Dominic Dyer can turn up to your Harrier Day and call for it if he wants to.
Dominic Dyer's a great guy, but we are not suggesting that people go out and break the law.
Maybe you could sort of draw him in a bit, because it's not good.
You don't know Dom, do you?
I don't know. All right.
I'll have a word with him.
I'll leave you with that
okay,
problem.
Thank you.
And of course, to make just one counterpoint to your crows on your gate, yes, I mean, we all get death threats. We get 24 death threats a month. It's just something you do. I actually rang one of them up recently to see what they thought about murdering me. It was fascinating. Let's go on to the second half of this, which I want to find a little bit of consensus here. Mark, you have managed to boot out the Bootadale, and you've got hold of your 20,000 acres of Scotland. What are you going to do with it? Or the bit you described to me was rather more structural. Perhaps the government takes control. What's your plan when this is all over?
We've got many plans, I think.
Right.
If current landowners were keen to manage their land, grouse-moors at the moment, but other land as well, more sustainably, we could go off and do something else. That would be good. But I think that there is a role for the state in this, so this is where our politics differ just a little bit. I would be quite keen, personally, for the state to own more land, particularly in national parks, because that's what happens in things that are real national parks across the world.
A little bit more nationalisation of land, but like they're doing in Scotland, land reform.
I think reform is generally a good thing, and land reform is a pretty good thing. But if the people... No clapping. If the people who own the land at the moment managed it more in the public interest to reduce the cost to everybody, the polluted water, the increased flood risk, increased carbon...
I'm going to, just on the science bit, every time you say one of those, I could put a picture up there saying, and the science says the opposite, and you can say your science says that. Can we just sort of call that a score draw?
Well,
but keep going.
because I'm a scientist... You're not.
Yes.
And I've read the science, and the science, it's like having Nigel Lawson on the Today programme in the past saying that climate change isn't happening. He knows this amount about it. The IPCC know this amount about it. So just because they're two opinions doesn't mean they're equally valid. And I'll back mine. I will back mine on the science.
My opinion on this one is as valid as yours, and I urge you all to Google it, I think. But could you Google it after we finish here? Ruth, what's your end game for all of this? So you succeeded. Raptor persecution has won. It's brought down whatever it is, world fascism or communism or end of raptors, whatever it is.
Sorry, say that again.
What are you trying to... What do you see Scotland looking like once raptor persecution has won? Or will it never win?
I don't know if it'll ever win. As long as there's grouse-shooting, it'll still be there.
Let's pretend there's no grouse-shooting. What does your Scotland look like? Is it owned by the Scottish?
It could be owned by the Scottish. I know there's one particular Danish landowner who's doing exceptionally well in Scotland. There's an issue about whether one individual should have ownership of such a big area. But I think when you've got a guy like Anders Olsen...
Talk about the management particularly. What's he doing?
Oh, he's got a rewilding thing going on. He's bought up a lot of land. I think he's the biggest landowner in Scotland at the moment. Yeah. And he's joined up with several other landowners. So they've got this contiguous area, and they're doing lots of regeneration. They've stopped driven grouse shooting. They're still doing walked-up grouse shooting.
Driven grouse shooting in some areas. He's quite piecemeal about what he does. Some things the old ways in some areas, and he brings in his rewilding ideas and others. But this is what slightly worries me. I'll come to you in a sec, Chris. But isn't this what I talk about as managing wild grouse moors for driven grouse? Isn't that a rewilding as far as you're concerned?
Managing moorland for driven grouse shooting,
yes.
Is rewilding.
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
No, you get more bird species. We've got 75% of the world's heather there.
You get more bird species on the driven grouse shooting.
You get more bird species. You do. Just
okay.
All right.
Okay,
Google it.
Google it. Listen. I bought this for you.
Okay,
I wrote this report,
read that for her
That's
side.
for you, Charlie, because I know you don't do very, very much research on your own.
I try not to. Thank you very much. I'm just going to keep pushing this point. Chris, you were writing, I think you were writing or you were saying something. Every time you write, I hear your voice. It's very difficult to tell which you're doing. Is it the case that management should be run by the government? That seemed to be what you were saying.
No, not necessarily. I think that, as Ruth said, we've got a private individual here. I think what we need is a public consensus on how our landscape is managed for the good of that public. And in Scotland, when you've got 1/5 of that land surface given over to driven grouse shooting, that is inaccessible to most of those people, and it's not the landscape that they envisage for a healthy future. I think what we've seen with projects like Anders Poulsen is that he's come into that area, he's got rid of driven grouse shooting, and he's got walk-up grouse shooting there, which is compatible with ecotourism. So the grouse shooters go out and enjoy the golden eagles as much as the ecotourists that visit there. He's replanting, he's diversifying that environment, he's not burning it every year, he's not draining it, he's undraining it. He's re-establishing those upland forests, which will be great for water quality, will be great for carbon capture, will be great to stop from flooding downstream, will be great for biodiversity, and yet with less intensive shooting taking place, that's entirely compatible with what the people want from that landscape.
And you speaking to the people, so that's your vision, is so you're happy for private land ownership and for people to do what they want on the land?
No, I think, just to go on, I share parallel views with Mark. I'm not really concerned about who owns the land, so long as they entertain a duty to look after it well for the benefit of everyone, as well as we know at the point. And we know that science is ongoing. Rewilding in many ways is not a young conservation tool. It's been going on for some time. It's gained a lot more profile at the moment, and we're spending a lot more time talking about it. But one thing we do know, Charlie, and I have to draw a parallel with a different industry, but we know that, for instance, and this is government data, that the Welsh sheep farming fraternity attracted a few years ago, when the report was done, about 6-7 years ago, £330 million a year in subsidies, but made £150 million profit, which indicates that the industry isn't healthy. But what they found was that within that industry, where sheep farming fraternities had taken on board B&Bs, pony trekking, ecotourism of any kind, and they diversified into tea rooms, their income increased by 20%, and the land use favoured biodiversity. So in my ideal world, the subsidies that we provide to support the rural economy here, we can continue to support. But rather than pay a failing industry, sheep farming, driven grouse shooting, we pay those subsidies to allow those people there to change the way they live.
Okay. I'm worried you're talking me out.
We give them money to do up their cottages so that they can bring people in. They can talk about their way of life. That becomes part of an eco-tourist experience, and therefore the industry can be maintained.
Right, there's an absolutely million points in there. You're very good at compressing lots of things, and I can't.
I get paid for that.
I know. Wish I did. I'd love to come on to the money as well.
So do you.
Biodiversity, for example, please Google it. The duty of the government to pay sheep farmers, please Google it. I think what we're talking about there here, just at the kind of the top level, is a very top-down version of what's taking place. And my version of the countryside is a kind of huge omelette of different ownerships where everybody gets to do their own thing.
Well, hold on, it's not though, because 50% of the land in England is owned by 1% of the people. So that's not too big an omelette.
Yeah.
That's all over one side of the pan.
But the other 50% is owned by the other 99% of the country, and that way, You are able to do some very big projects like United Utilities can do. The RSPB owns 0.5% of the land in the country. The RSPB owns 330. Actually, it's pension fund. I think it had some accounting problems. But anyway, it has 330,000 acres.
Now you're doing what I do, which is squeeze lots of little things in.
But it can do what it likes with this land. But what I'm worried about is you're suddenly telling people what to do, and that's not how we've run things in England and Wales, certainly.
Well, we're not telling people what
From a management point of view.
they should do.
Yep.
I'm telling people, because you asked me, what I would like the countryside to look like. And remember, at the moment, we're all putting our taxes into giving subsidies and grants to landowners.
Okay, right.
We have a stake
I've got to wrap it up.
10 million pounds to
Chris,
grouse-moors in England.
It's not that...
Taxpayers' money out of mine pocket and these people, your
Not
pocket,
true.
Charlie.
Stop clapping, I've got 10 seconds. I've got 10 seconds to tell you, okay, thank you very much, but I'm going to profoundly disagree with you. The estates we look after on the driven grouse shooting side are like super yachts. If you get rid of super yachts, all you harm is boat builders. I think you're calling for the new Highland clearances. I don't like your vision of the countryside.
Let Charlie finish, please.
But I'm going to have to leave it there and say, ladies and gentlemen, Ruth Tingay, Mark Avery and Chris Packham. Thank you very much.